Kalkadosh, Boker or Bekiim Bahalacha, day 57, page 176, Halacha 21. We're talking about when does a boy become Bar Mitzvah. So once a boy reaches his 13th birthday, he gains the status of Bar Mitzvah and becomes obligated to observe and fulfill all the mitzvot. Moreover, he now can count as a member of a minyan and validate it for all the purposes. A boy becomes Bar Mitzvah at dusk of the evening that begins the date of his birthday. Even if he was born much later, an hour during the day, for example, if a boy was born on the 15th of Siman, he becomes the Bar Mitzvah at the dusk after the 14th of Sivan, 13 years later. You don't have to wait until the following afternoon. Which means like this. For example, I was born on Shabbat, but at 5:59. So it was like mamash, right by Shekiah, right before Shekiah. For me to become Bar Mitzvah the 13 years later, right, which is the Yutet Tevet, I do not have to wait until, right, the 5:59 in the afternoon of the actual day. Right, so for example, Rosh Chodesh Nisan or whatever the date was. No, the second that it starts that night, that's it. Also, a boy becomes Bar Mitzvah whether or not he puts on the tefillin. It depends on his birth date only. Meaning, it has nothing to do with anything else. Birth date. The birthday comes that night. He's already Bar Mitzvah. Okay, 327. Look in the footnote. The Mishnah states the age 13 is of mitzvot. The Rosh asserted that this is the halacha that was taught by Moshe Rabbeinu when he was on Har Sinai. And it is one of the details of the general teaching of the Talmud. All halachic measurements were taught, meaning all the different types of measurements were taught by Moshe Rabbeinu on Har Sinai. Rashi explained that a male is not called an ish until he's at least 13 years old. The proof is that when it says the two sons Shimon and Levi, and Levi, the younger brother, was already 13 years old. And it says ish charbo. So Rav Yaakov Moilin countered that this is not a proof, since this pasuk does not demonstrate that a boy younger than 13 is not considered an ish. He insisted that there's no textual proof to this halacha, and that it is a tradition, meaning it's like halacha Moshe Sinai. It's a tradition that comes from Sinai, but it's not that we actually have a proof to it. He added that there's an allusion to the halacha in the pasuk, Anzu yatzarti li tilati yisaperu, which means the nation that I formed for me shall relate my praise. The word zu is spelled zayin vav, and the numerical value of zu is 13. But again, it's all hints. It's not written mifurash. According to the Sheiltot of Rabbi Chai Gaon, a boy becomes Bar Mitzvah only on his 13th birthday at the time of the day that he was born. So it means not only just the day that he was born, the time of the day that he was born. So if he was born at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 2 o'clock in the afternoon he becomes Bar Mitzvah. Not earlier. Okay? Several poskim agree with this as well, but in practice it's not halacha. According to Tosafot, Ramban, Rashba, Rashbatz, Maharil, Sever Mirat Enaim, Sifteh Kohen, the Shach, Bait Chadash, a boy becomes Bar Mitzvah the moment the dusk when his 13th birthday begins, and look in the Yabia Omer. What about somebody that's born during twilight, which means during Ben Hashemashot? What happens then? Because Ben Hashemashot is Sefek Yom, Sefek Laila, we don't know. So what is it? If a boy was born during Ben Hashemashot, twilight, and we cannot know whether the moment of birth counts as part of the previous day or part of the next day, as just beginning. The Mishambra ruled that in such a case we must take the stringent position regarding each Torah mitzvah. Based on this, the responsive Shevet Levi ruled that the boy must consider himself obligated to follow mitzvah beginning the earlier date. That being the case, the family should celebrate the occasion on the earlier date, since this is the day when the boy actually begins observing mitzvot. The Lachabra ruled that this boy should not serve as a shliach tzibur on the earlier date, but he can serve as shliach tzibur for a rvit of the prayer of the earlier date. Okay? In his Otzrot Yosef, he explained that this is based upon a compound doubt. First of all, there's an opinion of Talmud that twilight is definitely part of the previous day, and if so, the birthday is the earliest day. And second, according to Rabbi Natan, Midrash Mashot begins long after the time we call twilight, and therefore the birth was certainly during the day. So we can rely upon this and assume that he's Bar Mitzvah the day earlier regarding Arvit, since there's no extra blessings involved. In fact, there's a basis to permit the Bar Mitzvah also to serve a cantor for Shachrit Mincha, since everyone recites Amidah to themselves, and you're not doing it on the behalf of anybody else, meaning the Chazrat Hashatz is not on behalf of anybody else, the boy can also be counted as a minyan on the earlier date, since the concept of minyan is only the Rabbanan. Meaning that since all these things that a person is doing is the Rabbanan, they want to say, listen, since you have a doubt whether Be'emet it's day or nighttime, and even if you're going to say that maybe it's nighttime, maybe Be'emet it's only going to be the next day because Rabbeinu Tam holds that Bichlal, twilight is much later, so therefore you could be lenient to do with Arvit, because there's no extra berachot in Arvit. And you could also be lenient, he says, technically, even in Shachrit Mincha, because everyone does their own Amidah. So therefore there's no problems. Okay? Halacha 22. Yeah? Halacha Kavbet.
Bet?
Kavbet. Lecha techila. We should not rely on the boy himself to tell us whether or not he's 13 years old and to be counted as a member of the minyan. Even if he's dressed as an adult and he puts on tefillin, that does not make a proof. It is possible that the father is training him to pray with tefillin, but he's not becoming a bar mitzvah. To be sure what he is, we must hear his father or some other adult assert that he's already bar mitzvah. Even if someone gives third-hand testimony saying, I was told by the parents, it's right, he says that's also going to be acceptable testimony. Okay? Meaning, al tachshov shu bar mitzvah. Lo, אתה צריך לדעת שהוא bar mitzvah, right? You have to find out. So you find out whether it's from the parents, or even... No? If there's no adult to give such a testimony, and the congregation needs to proceed with the prayers, they may rely on the boy's own testimony that he's bar mitzvah, right? If there's nobody else. So then you could rely on them. They may proceed with the prayers as usual, including the cantor, the petition, and the chazarat hashatz, and the kohanim also. Nevertheless, the congregation must not appoint the boy to be shliach tzibur, even temporarily, unless the boy's father has told them that he's already 13 years old. Let's look at 328. This is the ruling of Maran Harishon Letzion 328 lemata 177 amud. Yeah. So he says this is the ruling of Maran Harishon Letzion. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach ruled that it is sufficient to ask the boy if he's already 13. זאת אומרת, לפי רב עובדיה, אל תשאל את הילד לכתחילה. תשאל קודם כל את האבא. Always ask the father first, right? Or somebody else that knows for a fact. You understand? But he says, but Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, no, just ask him. He argued that we don't need to fear that the boy is lying, since eventually we're going to find out the truth. Besides, he would not want the father to discover that he lied and misled the congregation. So you understand? So basically, there's no fear. But that's why Rav Shlomo Zalman permitted. אתה צודק, זה רב שלמה זלמן אורבך. But again, the Rishon LeZion, Rav Vadia wanted that you specifically ask a father. Or if not, you get a third-hand testimony. Okay, that's going to be okay. Meaning you're not asking the child himself. Okay? Last halacha, Kav Gimel, 23. What about to assume the boy has pubic hair? Once a boy has become 13 years old, we may count him as a member of minyan, even though we don't know if he has grown pubic hair. The halacha requiring a minyan for the prayers is the midrabanan, and therefore we assume that he probably has pubic hair. Meaning, right? You don't have to take him to the mikveh to start checking out whether he has 2 hairs or not. You understand? Mistama, he's 13, Zakvar must speak. 329, Lemata. This is the ruling of the Ramah, based on Rav Yosef Kohen. He said that regarding counting for minyan, we rely on the Chazakat derava, which means that we always assume that a 13-year-old already has hairs. Although many poskim rule that the prayer is a mitzvah min Torah, all poskim agree, right, that praying, right, with a minyan is only with the Rabbanan. Regarding a mitzvah of the Torah, we cannot rely on Chazakat derava. So, anything that you need min Torah, אתה לא יכול לסמוך על רבה. אתה לא יכול לסמוך לחזקה. To do with tefillah b'tzibur, you can be somech on the chazakah of Rava that mistama he already has 2 pubic hairs. According to some poskim, and in particular Rabbeinu Yitzhak Bar Sheshat, so the Rivash, he comes and he says we may rely on the chazakah of Rava even to do with the Mina Torah. Maran Rishon LeZion, right, in the footnote on Purim, said that if people rely on this opinion for mitzvot of the Torah, such as listening to the boy recite to the Friday evening Kiddush, it can be condoned. The Halacha Berurah, however, ruled that we must not rely on the Chazakat derava regarding mitzvot of the Torah. Okay, so the Halacha Berurah says, Doraita al tismoch. Okay, above in Siman 53, it was explained that people should not rely upon the Chazakat derava to allow a boy to serve as shliach tzibur for Chazarat Avshatz. The Halacha Berurah related that he discussed this matter with his father, Rishon LeZion, and concluded that the boy may even be appointed shliach tzibur for Chazarat Avshatz as well. Okay, last halacha, premature baby. The Akudius have ruled that if someone was born a month or 2 before the due date and was kept in an incubator for a prolonged period, we can still count as the age for the day of the actual birth and not from when he was expected to be born or when he was weaned from the incubator.